We just got a great question from Claire about the holidays and dealing with your family and drawing boundaries. Okay, you ready? Listen up, because we could all use this particular advice. The holidays are here, Mel, and even though it's a time I should be feeling cheerful and festive, I'm full of anxiety over spending time with my toxic family. Every year it's the same thing. Inappropriate comments, questions that totally deplete me, and it makes me wonder if this is even my family. Can you please help? Signed, Claire. Claire, you shouldn't feel alone because so many people have anxiety about toxic relationships related to their families and how they have to confront them during the holidays. So here's the thing I want you to think about when it comes to the holidays. Holidays can be one of two things when you have toxic relationships with your family. It can either be a personal challenge or it can be a chance to have a personal transformation. And the personal transformation that I'm talking about is not changing your mother or your annoying older brother or your racist aunt. I'm talking about whether or not you have a personal transformation, because you can't fully get rid of toxic situations or toxic people, but you can transform how you behave when you're around those kinds of people. So the holidays can be a chance for you to practice boundaries, practice self-control, to be emotionally resilient and strong and not get triggered, and to also have the courage to express the new you, to express your true self. So if you left home a long time ago, you've grown as a person, you've changed, you've evolved, and then every time you go back home, you feel like you've stepped into a time warp and you're suddenly 8 years old again. This is a chance to transform yourself so that when you walk in the door, you are who you are now, not who you used to be when you still lived at home. And so there's a couple things that I want you to think about before you go home, before you have the interaction, so that you are prepared emotionally to make this a transformation for yourself personally. Number one, don't assume the old role that you used to play. So just because you're in your childhood home or you're with people that you know from your childhood, do not make the mistake of falling back into old patterns. Don't suddenly start acting like the youngest one again, if you're the youngest in your family. If you're always been dad's favorite and everybody hates that, stop playing into it. So there are things that we do that we don't even realize when we step into our childhood homes or around the people that we grew up with, where we slip right back into old patterns. Make sure you know what those are so that you have them in check for yourself. Number two, this is a huge one. Don't take the bait. This was advice that I got from my brother a long time ago. Don't take the bait. You know that there are relatives and friends from your past that just love to cast the guilt. They just love to cause issues. They're constantly casting like a fisherman, all kinds of things out there. And if you're the kind of person like I used to be, when somebody gets upset, you grab the bait and then you start trying to make it okay. And the next thing you know, you're arguing with somebody over something really stupid. Just don't take it. Don't let yourself get triggered. If somebody's casting the guilt, let them cast. Don't hit that lure. You know what I'm saying? They're welcome to say whatever they want to say. If you don't react, there's no issue. You don't have to worry about making sure that your mom or your dad doesn't say that stuff. Just don't react to it. And you'll be shocked at how the dynamic changes. You know, this is another piece of advice that my friend Danielle gave me today, and it comes from the Calm app. You can also, before you go into the situation, visualize a really busy road. Now, in a very busy road, there are people that are passengers in those cars, and there are people that are pedestrians on the sidewalk who are watching the cars go by. I want you to think about the dynamic in your family as cars zipping down the highway, right? Everybody's got all kinds of issues and conversations and kids and this and that, and people want attention, and there's all kinds of things racing by. Your role when you're around your family is to be a pedestrian on the sidewalk, watching it all go by. This is another form of not taking the bait. The last thing you want to do when your mom pulls the guilt train up is to climb on board and be a passenger on that ride, okay? You know what I'm saying? You're going to stay on the sidewalk. You're not going to take the bait. You're just going to watch the traffic as it speeds and whips by. Don't climb in when the guilt car pulls up, okay? Next thing, this has also been a major thing for me, empathy. Empathy is a superpower. My relationship with my mom changed dramatically for the better when I stopped judging her and I started thinking about what she must be feeling. Seriously, like if you've got somebody in your life that's angry, that says hurtful things, that's disappointed or upset, all of those things, anger, pain, disappointment, It's all just a mask for hurt. So any kind of toxic behavior that you're seeing in other people, unless it's some sort of narcissism personality disorder, for most normal human beings, if they're exhibiting bad behavior, it's literally just unexpressed hurt. That's all that it is. And a healthy dose of empathy, like thinking about how hard it was in the household where your parents grew up, or thinking about all the struggles that maybe one of your siblings who's really annoying because they take up all the energy, how many struggles they've faced, or thinking about how lonely your aunt is because your uncle's died. Thinking from a point of view that's empathetic, it's amazing. It's very personally transforming because it helps you set boundaries. It helps you not get triggered. It helps you to be more emotionally mature and resilient, and it will help you make these holidays an opportunity for personal transformation instead of a massive personal challenge. I really, really hope that that helps you have a much happier holiday season. We're covering a topic that I get a lot of questions about, and it is about toxic coworkers and how you should not let a toxic coworker ruin your job, ruin your day, ruin your meeting. And we're going to talk about the 3 research-backed things that you need to do if you're dealing with a toxic coworker that is making you not enjoy your job or not enjoy being around them, whatever it is. Toxic coworkers are a major problem. They're a major problem for team productivity. They destroy culture. They impact how much gets done. They certainly probably impact your enjoyment at work. And there are things that you can do based on the research in order to address and deal with a toxic coworker, and also to define the boundaries that you need to have so that you're not impacted by them. So we got this question, and so we're going to spin off this question, but the advice goes for any time you're dealing with somebody at work who's toxic, okay? Because one of the nice things about being at work is that if the person is toxic, oftentimes you've got more structure around the relationship because you have a boss, because you have HR, because you have team dynamics to help you coach, nudge, and I guess inspire in some ways or inform this person that the behavior really isn't working for the team or for you. And I'm going to give you the 3 pieces of research and advice that come from Harvard Business School and some researchers there that will really work. So here's a question from Natasha. I absolutely love my job, but my company recently hired a new employee from my department who is awful. Awful. And Natasha even wrote in all caps that she's awful. She doesn't take responsibility for any of her mistakes. She takes her anger out on her coworkers and doesn't seem to have respect for anyone in the company. She is unbearable to work with. So, Natasha, if you've got somebody that's taking her anger out on coworkers and she has no respect for people, that would be unbearable, and I'm glad you're writing this. And so I want to draw a line in the sand. So first of all, there are certain behaviors that go way beyond being toxic. Sexual harassment, harassment of any kind, stealing, immoral behavior. Those are things that not only you shouldn't deal with, but HR needs to know about them. And so if that's what's going on with a coworker, you need to get your boss and you need to get HR involved because that's a whole different level than just toxicity. Toxicity is referring to what Natasha's talking about, which is the behavior patterns in people that create a negative space for everybody else. And those can include gossiping. If you've got a coworker that's constantly fluttering by your office and wants to gossip about what's going on at work, that's a toxic person. If you got somebody that backstabs people, if you've got somebody that interrupts and dominates the corporate culture or meetings, that can become a toxic situation for culture. If you've got somebody that's constantly raising their hand or agreeing to do things, but guess what? They never follow through. Yours truly? I used to be that kind of person. I used to be the yes woman. And then I just wouldn't do anything. Like, honestly, I was literally the world's worst employee at a number of my jobs. I was the toxic person. I was also miserable, which is why I was doing that. And that's a very important point. A lot of people that act out at work are miserable. And so I think one of the things, before I tell you the 3 things, there we are. We just lost our signal. Oh no. Tracy, are we okay? I want to make sure that we still have our friends on Instagram or on Facebook and YouTube. Are we still okay?
Nothing from her yet. I'll let you know.
You might want to call her. So
No, she's texting. Okay.
we're okay?
We're good.
Okay, it said lost signal. Okay, great. So I also want to put that in to the mix of the 3 things I'm about to share with you in terms of the advice, because I think it's really important for your personal boundaries to use what I always talk about, which is empathy. Understand that anybody that's acting out, it doesn't excuse the behavior, it explains it. And it also allows you to separate yourself emotionally. That person is likely miserable. That person has a bad life, which is why they treat people badly. And so if you can start to really use empathy to put it on them versus making it that they are doing something to you, that can help you from getting hooked emotionally. However, even when you distance yourself, you still have to do something about it. And so here's what you're going to do. According to Harvard Business Review, the single most important factor in the success of a team, the success of a culture, is the quality of the relationships between colleagues at work, between the people on a team. And Natasha, you know this because you're experiencing somebody who's toxic. She takes her anger out on you. She doesn't take responsibility for her mistakes. She's disrespectful to people. And of course, this is going to create a horrible environment to work in. So here are 3 things that you can do immediately in order to fix this situation. Number 1, and you're gonna hate this. Number 1, you have to talk to them. Hinting is not allowed, and here's why. Based on the research, the majority of people lack self-awareness at work. You get that? The person who's disrespecting you likely doesn't even know what they're doing. The person who's taking his or her anger out on you likely doesn't know how it's impacting you. You see, when people do this, when they have these kind of toxic patterns, they've been getting away with them for so long because nobody has had the courage to cross-check them verbally on it. And that's where you come in. Lucky you. You're in their life because your purpose in their life is to be the one person that has the courage to actually sit down and have a candid conversation about it. So what are you going to do? How do you have that candid conversation? First of all, try not to make them wrong. Try not to come in and shame them and tell them all the horrible things they're doing, because you'll immediately create a situation where they're defensive. And if the research bears out from Harvard Business School and they actually had no idea that they were doing it, they might get defensive. The better way to do it, the more effective way to do it, is to explain how their behavior impacts you. And when you do that, most people are mortified because most people are venting or are disrespectful and they're not even thinking about the impact it has because nobody's ever told them. And the other thing that's really important when you have this conversation is come up with specific examples. So if you've got this toxic coworker, Natasha, for the next couple days, write down very specific examples of exactly what happened, exactly what this toxic coworker did, and exactly how it made you feel. And the reason why you want to do specific actions is because most of us are so unaware that just generally saying you're very disrespectful and it makes me feel demoralized. It makes me not want to come into work. It makes me not want to be your colleague. It makes me not want to volunteer to help you. Most of us just feel like horrible when something like that is told to us, but we don't really know how to check the behavior. But if you say, oh, well, we were in a meeting and I shared an idea and you said, well, that's really not going to work. I think it's a waste of our time to do that. Kind of stupid. When you demean my ideas publicly, it makes me not want to speak. You're talking down to me. Whoa, if I hear it that way, wow. Now I know what we're talking about. And here's the other thing. You can actually give them some advice. So the next time we're in a meeting, if you disagree with something that I have to say, it's fine to disagree, but you don't have to make it personal. And that will give them the training that they need. And, that's the hardest thing to do. Have the conversation. The second thing. Oh, and here's one final thing when you ask the feedback. You might want to ask them, if they have any feedback for you. Because then it becomes more of a dialogue and they may have feedback for you. For all you know, you're behaving in a way that's triggering them to disrespect you. You don't know. And unless you have the candid conversation, which you're going to have to be brave and courageous to do, nothing's going to change. Okay, so candid conversation. Number 2, you got to raise your own game. Got to raise your own game. And so what is the game that you play at work? You got to get out of the head that it's all about you. The best team members are always thinking about how to make the team better. The best team members are loyal to the team. The best people to work with are the ones that are in it together. And so in order for you to get your toxic colleague to shift behavior, you got to model it. And here's the interesting thing about the research. When people are working with coworkers or on a team where people collaborate and where you have honest conversations, it creates what we call psychological safety, which basically just means I feel safe working with you. I know that if I come to you with feedback, you'll listen. I know that if I tell you how your behavior is impacting me, you'll actually care. I know that if you need help, you'll come to me, and I know if I need help, I can come to you. That's what psychological safety means. You're a safe person and hopefully a fun person to work with. So you've got to model that. That means you got to ask for support. That means you got to have direct conversations, and it means you got to support your team members too. And do you realize that when you work with other people that do this, team members are 35 times more likely to show visible commitment to your success. And they're 47% more likely when you model it to work hard to build and maintain your trust. So don't ever get resigned in thinking that the way that you behave won't impact how somebody else is behaving around you. Another thing that you absolutely have to do is you have to go and talk to your boss if the conversation continues. You have to. And the reason why is it takes just one person to ruin a culture. It takes just one person to ruin a team dynamic at work. If you allow toxic behavior to continue on, it will destroy the work for everybody that has to work with them. It literally is like a skunk. Toxic people at work are like a skunk. You don't have to see them to smell them. You don't have to be next to them to feel the impact of their stink. And so if you've had the conversation and you've also been modeling the behavior and nothing is changing, it's time to take it upstairs. It's time to go to your boss. And the reason why it's important to go to your boss, and what are you going to go to your boss with? You're going to have a candid conversation. In fact, you're going to have the exact same one with your boss that you had with your toxic, skunky coworker. And you're going to give the boss specific examples, and you're going to explain what you explained to your coworker, and then you're going to ask your boss to hold a team meeting. Not to indict anybody, but to basically draw very clear lines in the sand about what are the team norms that are acceptable and what is not acceptable. And here's what's interesting. When a manager or a boss defines norms, the team is 73 times more likely to work hard to keep them. And here's the kicker. They're 125 times more likely to address the situation if there's somebody on the team who is not operating within the norms. You know, it's so obvious. I mean, think about it. If somebody were to walk in to work and put their feet up on the desk and turn on porn and be sitting at their desk watching porn, would that be the norm for your workplace? I don't think so, unless you're working for Playboy or you're working in the porn industry. That would be so out of the norm that everybody would address it immediately, period, full stop. And what I want you to understand is that when you take responsibility for how you're acting on the team, and you're collaborative, and you're supportive, and you're putting the team first, and you're modeling that behavior, and when you also bring the courage, and you dare, as Brene Brown says, to be brave enough to have honest conversations with your colleagues about what's acceptable and what's not based on how things are impacting you, you personally shift the culture in a positive direction. So it comes back to the core message that I always have for you. No matter what's happening around or to you, you hold the power because you always have the power to have an honest conversation. You always have the power to discuss how things are impacting you. You always have the power to make requests. And you certainly have the power to draw boundaries. And you also have the power, by the way, if the culture gets worse and worse, or you just are tired of it because it's not changing, to go find a different job. The power is always in you. And I think that's something that's so important to constantly remind yourself. I get that I don't like where I am, but what could I do to change it? How can I change how I think about this? And I'm telling you right now, you know this. The second you start changing how you think about a situation, the situation changes. The second you start changing how you think about what your options are, you start to see them. The second you stop thinking that you're stuck or that you're a victim and you start thinking about how you solve something, you start to see solutions. And so the answer is always in you. And now you know the 3 easy steps, thanks to the research at the great folks at Harvard Business School, to address effectively a toxic coworker. And you also know, I think, 2 very important things. Number 1, based on the research, the majority of us have no clue how we're showing up at work. We're not self-aware, which is why it's so important for you to have conversations. And the second thing is, the second norms get defined and people start acting within them in your team, the team shifts and the productivity and the enjoyment and the collaboration will shift too. And you personally could be the change agent that makes it happen. How many of you are struggling with the issue of setting boundaries with family members and then feeling this level of, quote, guilt when you start to do so? If you relate to this is going to be incredibly helpful information that I'm about to share with you. If you have any questions, just put them right in the comments. I might have some time to take some questions. But first we're going to talk about setting boundaries and then we're going to get into guilt. Okay, so let's talk about setting boundaries. So interestingly, Lisa is already setting boundaries because did you hear what she said? She has stopped reaching out because why would you step into an emotional boxing ring only to get punched in the face, right? So she's stopped reaching out, but she has remained in contact on Facebook where she has liked posts, which is a very positive way to interact with somebody. She's commenting in positive ways, very positive way, make short little comments. It's literally like giving somebody a hug from far away. When you see somebody liking your posts, leaving positive comments, it stimulates a dopamine release. And so it literally does have a positive impact on the other end without you getting entangled emotionally. So she has set boundaries. So question number 1, how do you know when you need to set boundaries? Here's how you can think about it. So think about your relationships on a scale from 1 to 10, right? 1 to 10. 1 being that it's an absolutely fabulous relationship, no issues whatsoever. You're super happy about this person. You're super happy about your connection with this person. 10 is, it is so triggering. You're so uncomfortable. You can barely be around the person. You have a visceral reaction, boundary, 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 boundary. If you are anywhere in the range of 6 to 10, it is time to think about boundaries. And what are boundaries? I'm going to show you. Hey, Oakley! Let me see if Oakley can hear me. Oh! Can you know those snow globes in your room? Would you mind bringing them down? I want to show everybody on this live stream something. So I want to show you something about boundaries. I'm so psyched he's home because I know he wants to say hello and I can't wait to show you this and I'm pretty sure.
Hi, everyone.
All right, cool. Dude, who gave you this?
Bossy.
Oh, my mom. My mom gave you this.
Guys.
Bye, dude. You don't want to stay? You good? Okay, he's good. Snow globe from my mother to Oakley. Boundaries is a confusing word. I want you to think about force fields, right? I want you to think about the fact that if you're a 6 to a 10 with somebody that's triggering you, so 1 is blissful, 10 is visceral, just can't be around that person. You need to think about force fields because if they're part of your family, you might have to see them unless they're dangerous or destructive or they're racist or they're bigoted, in which case you don't have to see them and you can make those boundaries very clear. So I think about toxic people like snow globes, right? They love to shake crap up. They love to shake stuff up and they love to especially shake you up and poke at you and trigger you and look at all that crap that they're stirring up. Now, The interesting thing about a snow globe is that this is like representative of your head, okay? And so I like snow globes as a visual for when you're talking about boundaries, because they can both represent the person who triggers you. So visualize your mom or your son or your ex-husband or your brother or your sister-in-law or that cousin or whatever it may be, and how whenever they do that stuff that triggers you, it's like they're shaking their own globe, and their own head does this. So a force field basically means, boundaries basically means that when the toxic person in your family starts doing this to their own head and to the own situation, let that crap that gets stirred up stay in their head. You want a boundary. You don't want to climb in the globe with them and get all shaken up either, right? You want distance from them. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about boundaries. It's not just physical distance, it's emotional distance. So that when you see their stuff shaking up, when you see them starting to throw the shame and the guilt and all that crap around, you realize, whoa, look at how much unresolved garbage they have in their head. Wouldn't that stink to live with all this kind of stuff in your head? I mean, come on. How terrible would it be to be such an emotional toxic basket case that you got to use shame and guilt and stir things up all the time because you can't live otherwise? The secret to boundaries with your family is realizing that their stuff needs to stay in their globe. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to operate in a way that when they start shaking their globe, that you all of a sudden start getting shaken up in your head. Their stuff stays with them, okay? That's what boundaries mean. And I find this visual to be extraordinarily helpful when I'm dealing with toxic people, because it allows me, here's the secret, I literally visualize when somebody is starting to do something that's really like toxic or annoying or like whatever. They're throwing a little hissy fit about something that's stupid as a way to get control of a situation in a family, because family is all about power dynamics and being the center of attention, right? When families don't work, that's what's not working about them. That somebody's upset and they're trying to put the attention on themselves and they're trying to control what's going on. So they shake. They use all kinds of emotional garbage to shake the globe. So when I'm around somebody that's like that, I visualize literally a snow globe on top of their shoulders. And visualizing that for me allows me to set an emotional boundary and go, whoop, force field's up. They're busy shaking stuff. That's about them. Doesn't have anything to do with me, because shame is a weapon. Guilt is a weapon that people use to manipulate you. And that's why it is so important. Now, I also have a 6-month rule. A 6-month rule for people that are toxic, that are constantly doing this kind of stuff with you. If you love them, give them 6 months. Offer up options to help them. Offer up options around therapy, books to read. Talk to them. Does it bother you that you're this upset about this kind of thing? Have you ever wanted to try to resolve it? Have you ever wanted to feel more settled? Because what happens when you stop shaking? All of that crap that you stir up starts to settle. It's pretty amazing. But what's interesting about toxic people is that oftentimes they don't want help. You want to know why? Because if I can't do this, I don't know how to control you. And the second you stop reacting to this, I'm going to do more of this because I don't know how to control you when you don't react to it. And so the secret is, don't step into the globe with them. For 6 months, offer support, offer resources. And if after 6 months somebody in your life is not willing to stop doing this to themselves and to you, you know it's time for very significant boundaries, perhaps even cutting them out, if it's that distressful to you. They'll get the message all right. They'll get the message. And first they're going to freak out, though, because they manipulate you by doing this, right? How many of you jump the second that your mom or your dad throws the guilt around? How many of you feel bad when your brother or your sister makes you feel bad about what you didn't do based on what they wanted you to do? The second you stop reacting to that stuff, they're going to shake a lot more, and then they're going to get really, really lonely. And then they're going to realize what I'm doing isn't working, so I now need to change. You can only change your response, so stop responding to people that do this. You got it? Mel, what do I do if my family still doesn't understand me at the age of 55? They can make me feel like I'm wrong. They make me feel like I'm wrong and I can't fix it. So I'm going to attack this question. What do I do if my family doesn't understand me? they make me feel like I'm wrong and I can't seem to fix the dynamic. First of all, we got to talk about two things. One is your family's behavior and what you can do to potentially influence their behavior toward you. And the second thing is your processing and reaction to their behavior. So the first thing I want you to understand is that you can't change somebody else. If your family does not understand you, and if they say things or operate in a way that makes you feel wrong, you will probably never change that dynamic. And so one of the things that you need to do is you need to accept that this is just how it is. And you need to stop wishing that things could be different. And you need to focus your energy on changing your thought process and your actions in terms of how you respond to their behavior. Because there is the fact that your family does whatever your family does. They make you wrong, they criticize you, they don't pay attention to you, they spoil the other people. Whatever it is that the actions are, it is what it is. If you're in your 50s and this is how it's always been, this is probably how it's always going to be. And the faster that you accept that and you stop going to the source that hurt you to try to find your healing, the faster you will gain control. That's number one. Number two, let's reframe misunderstand. Because I think that when people misunderstand you or criticize you, like you could flip this and you could see it as a source of power. You know, there's this great quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson: to be great is to be misunderstood. Maybe you're different from your family. Maybe you're the one that's going to break some generational cycles. Maybe you are living out your truth and you're living your life on your terms. And that's very confronting to your family because they don't understand it. They don't need to understand what you're doing. You need to understand what you're doing. And that's why you also need to practice habits of self-validation and self-love and self-support. You got to stop looking outside of yourself for the validation, love, and support that you need. And you need to give it to yourself. Because when you can learn how to look yourself in the mirror, and even if your family doesn't understand you or they make you wrong or they say stupid shit that makes you, used to make you feel bad, if you can look in the mirror and say, well, I like who I am, I like my life, it might sting a little if your parents don't approve of what you're doing or your siblings question what you're doing or they don't support you the way you deserve to be supported. But their criticism won't change how you feel about you. So that's rule number one. Double down on habits of self-acceptance, on self-celebration, and stop looking for the validation, love, and support that you need in people who cannot give it to you. That's number one. Number two, I just said that you cannot change somebody else, but you can influence them by focusing on yourself and by coming from a different place. If you're in this sort of deadlock dynamic with your family and you're going to them and you feel misunderstood, I guarantee you on the other side, if you took the time, and I'm not suggesting you want to, but if you do want to improve your relationship, there's a simple thing about relationships. The one thing that will change any relationship dynamic, whether it's family or friends or romantic, committed partnership, the one thing that changes any relationship is you going out of your way to make sure somebody else's fundamental needs are met. Are you showing up in a way that your family feels seen and heard and appreciated? Are you reaching out? Are you acknowledging what they're doing? Are you complimenting them on the things that they're doing? For many, many years, my mom and I were at a complete deadlock. We loved each other to death, but we didn't understand each other. And because we didn't understand each other, because in many ways we're super similar and in other ways we're very different, because we didn't understand each other, there was a lot of pent up hurt because we wanted to feel connected. We wanted to feel supported by one another. But because we live our lives so differently, you know, she's in the Midwest, in the house that I grew up in a really small town. I went east for college. I never came home. We both hate the fact that we don't live near each other. And instead of somehow coming together and figuring out new ways to be more deeply connected rather than living next door to each other, we stopped understanding each other. And that led to a lot of this. And when you stop understanding each other, then you cross your arms and go, oh, well, I'm over here and why are you over there? And, you know, if, you know, come on over the line and then I'll feel safe with you again. And so we were in a standoff for a long time, a lot of misunderstanding, kind of hurt feelings, bristly phone calls. When I'd get together, you know, either going to see my folks or then coming here, it'd be tense because there was so much unresolved stuff because we didn't understand each other. I wanted her to be loving. She wanted me to be loving. I wanted her to make more of an effort. She wanted me to make more of an effort. Does this sound familiar, everybody? Well, if you want to stop the tug of war that comes from misunderstanding, drop the rope and understand that everybody on the planet just wants to be seen, to be heard, and to be celebrated. And one of the things that has profoundly changed my relationship with my mom, it's started to heal it, is first of all, I've done a tremendous amount of work on myself for my own childhood trauma, my own nervous system. Healing yourself is the greatest way to heal any other relationship because every relationship starts with you. But the second thing that I did is 3 days a week, I have an alarm that goes off in my phone at the same time that says, call mom. And I pick up the phone and I call my mom. And the only intention behind that call is to just check in and ask her a bunch of questions about what's going on and to show up in a way, no strings attached, that makes my mom know that I see her, I hear her, and I appreciate and celebrate her. And I notice that the more frequently we talk and check in, the way more connected we are, the way more we understand one another. And it's been and was one way for a long time because I did it with no strings attached. I did it not to fix my mom. I did it to empower a dynamic where I was showing up differently. And by me showing up differently, it has created a way for her to show up differently because she now feels emotionally safe with me. She now feels like I understand her again. She now, and says this, I feel like you're back. I feel like the daughter that left for college and never came home has actually come home. And that has happened because I've worked on myself, because I have stopped doing what you're doing, which is crossing your arms and going, nobody understands me and why don't they support me and why don't they show up differently? And I've instead said, this matters to me. So I'm going to give my folks what I have been wishing I'd get from them. And that shifts everything because behind any person that doesn't understand you, or any person that you have some kind of toxic dynamic, I promise you, there is either their own childhood trauma and untreated stuff that they don't have any idea that is impacting their current relationships, or more likely, or on top of, there's hurt feelings. Somebody feels disrespected, somebody feels invisible, somebody feels disconnected. And human beings, instead of leaning toward each other, tend to cross their arms and lean back. It's a protection mechanism. So that's a whole lot that I just threw at you, but I think I can sum it up. If you feel misunderstood by your family, is number one, stop going to them for understanding and start giving it to yourself. Double down on the habits in the High Five Habit book, habits of self-acceptance, habits of seeing yourself, habits of understanding yourself. The next thing that you can do is work on your own healing. That's the best way to heal any other relationship, is heal yourself first, and get your nervous system regulated, get your childhood trauma treated, get yourself in order so that you can look yourself in the eye and be proud of and loving of yourself. And then the final piece of advice is, if you truly want to try to shift the dynamic, change how you're showing up and focus on acting in a way that the people in your life that you want to connect with feel seen, heard, and appreciated by you. And frequency of phone calls, remembering important dates, asking questions and caring, and doing it with no strings attached is the fastest way to turn a relationship around. And I think it's really important that you, if you take that on, you do it because you want to be the kind of person that shows up that way. But you drop the expectation that somebody else will actually change. You're changing how you show up because that's what aligns with your values. Got it? Good.
So many people do not like what they do for a living.
Yeah.
And in the book, you write about having a job that was very toxic. Can you describe what it felt like to walk into work and how you practice a homecoming when you're in a toxic environment?
Yes. It is so stressful in your body, in your mind. And that's even before you can do your work, right? Just the
the
social
Sunday
setting.
scaries, the driving in, the
dreading it. It's terrible. And so then, of course, you can't flow in a spirit of excellence because you're, battling all of these other dynamics. And so I like to encourage people to create a morning ritual so that you show up with your cup already full.
So can you give us an example?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yes. So first of all, wake up before you have to get up.
Okay, what does that mean?
That means don't set your alarm for the time you have to jump out of bed and jump in the shower, because now you've already started your day frantic.
Yes.
So now I'm going into a toxic place already feeling anxious.
Okay.
So you want to wake up a little bit earlier and then figure out what are the practices that would nourish me. For some people, that will be listening to music. I like to say, in every season of your life, come up with your theme song.
Yep.
So your theme song will get you in the right mindset. Doing some stretching next to the bed, body movement, exercise. Some people go for an early morning walk, so then they already feel settled and slowed down. Meditation and or prayer, reading something inspirational and that can kind of create the mantra for your day.
Why does this matter? Because when somebody's like, you have no idea. I have this abusive boss and these jerks that I work with, and I can't quit, and I've got bills to pay. Don't sit here, Dr. Tama, and tell me that I should freaking stretch.
Yes.
Go for a walk. Are you crazy, woman?
Yeah.
Like, why does this matter?
I want to introduce you to the part of you that is not an employee. You are more than your labor.
Oh.
So if we center our full session every week on your boss, then all you are is your boss's worker. And there is a you beyond your boss.
Wow. Is that true about being in a bad relationship too?
Yeah. That they consume a lot of your energy and time, but you were a person before you met them. And whether this continues or not, you're going to be a person, and we want to meet that person. We want to nourish that person because there is more to you than what they see. And a part of what they're responding to is they see the vastness of you and don't like it.
Hi, Poppy.
Hi, Mel. How are you?
I'm great. Lay it on me, Poppy.
Okay. I have a question for you. So like, how does one turn off that voice that's, been programmed into our head, telling us that, our needs or emotions don't matter and we must cater to theirs? So like, how do you turn that off?
Okay, it's an excellent question. And you don't turn it off. You have to lay a new soundtrack. So
Okay.
if you think about the default mindset, almost like a playlist that runs in the background, that it's almost hard to make it go silent. It's much easier to put a new playlist in there.
Right.
And so there are two things that, two tricks I'm going to give you. So,
Okay.
number one, well, before I get into the tricks, I just want to acknowledge something. Great job recognizing that the default thinking doesn't serve you in your life now. So, the fact that you recognize, wow, I have this way of thinking that I don't want in my life, and I'm going to do something about it. So, that's enormous and it's amazing. Can you tell me, what does this default soundtrack sound like? What does it say to you?
So it says that, whenever I put myself first and don't put, other people first, I'm selfish. Or if I want to do something for myself, it's never going to succeed.
Now,
But yeah,
did somebody tell you that?
yes, my parents,
Okay.
actually.
All right. So, thank you for like admitting that. And the reason why your parents told you that is because their parents probably told them that. And so they probably thought that they were protecting you. And instead, they sentenced you to a brain and a way of thinking that makes you feel terrible.
Right.
And so when you can recognize who the programming comes from, it also helps because then you can separate yourself from that voice because it's not your voice, it's your parents' voice. And you have a chance to break this chain. You have the chance to be the one that this playlist dies with. You
Right.
have the chance to create a whole new way of thinking and talking to yourself. And that's incredible. And so the first thing that you said is that you have a belief because somebody programmed this into your mind that runs on default that putting yourself first is selfish. Correct?
Right.
How does that impact your life?
I get burnout, basically. Mhm.
If you could program a different belief, what would the belief be?
That, worth it, basically. It's okay for me to take care of myself. It's okay for me to have emotions. It's okay for me to just be me. Yeah.
Oh, I love this. Your whole life's about to change. Because not
Thank you.
only is it okay, I deserve to feel how I feel.
Right.
Like the main mantra I want you to have is I deserve to be happy. Does this make me happy? I deserve to feel happy. Does this make me happy? What would change in your life if you started to tell yourself over and over every single morning when you start your day, I deserve to be happy today? What would change if you believed that happiness was something you deserved?
Wow. I think that my day-to-day would be a lot better, basically. I would actually, get to cross off all the lists that I put down on my to-do list. I would have self-confidence. I would be able to go out and have a great day with friends. I notice that I hold myself back a lot because of what's been programmed in my head. And I'm done with that.
Well, I'm glad you recognize it. That's a huge step. Most of us sleepwalk through life and don't even realize that we have been trained as little kids to make everybody around us happy and that it's your job to make people happy. It's your job to keep people satisfied. It's your job to make sure nobody's disappointed with you. And part of the problem is that underneath what your story is, which is it's selfish to put myself first, You have an uglier story. And the uglier story, which I recognize because I had this one too, is people will be mad at me if I put myself first. There will be consequences if I do what's good for me. And so that's what you're really wrestling with, is that you've connected taking care of yourself with somebody pulling their love away.
Yes.
And that's why you're scared to put yourself first. This goes way deeper. And so you're doing fantastic on behalf of all of us by recognizing that your own thinking is holding yourself back. And I can tell you're just sick of it. And so here's what you have to start to do. Number one, I want you to name the voice.
Name it?
Yeah, give it a name. Sally, Sue, Jocko, Raul,
Oh.
Michael. We got to name this thing.
Oh boy. Vicky, I guess.
Vicky. Okay. So when this default programming comes up, you're going to talk back to Vicky. Okay?
Okay.
And literally, you can even physically, when you feel yourself holding yourself back, that's the signal that this is default programming. You're going to turn toward Vicky. Literally, I want you to turn your body, and you're going to look as if Vicky's there, and you're going to be like, shut up, Vicky.
Right.
Now I want to hear you do it.
Shut up, Vicky.
Yeah, but if you don't make your boss happy, nobody's going to love you. Tell her, shut up.
Shut up.
If you don't do exactly what your parents want, they're going to be disappointed.
Shut up.
Say it louder. I don't believe you.
Shut up.
Say her name.
Shut up, Vicky.
You don't want to believe this shit Vicky's saying, right?
Nope.
What do you want to believe?
In myself.
Yeah. Your parents want you to be happy. They don't know how to make you happy. So they're just telling you what their parents told them. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying this is what people do. You are now an adult. You're not to blame for the crap, the malarkey, the garbage, the gunk, the generational trauma shit that your parents put in your brain. You're responsible, now that you're an adult, for reprogramming this. And so whenever your mind tells you something that you don't want to think, shut up, Vicky. I don't believe that. I believe that if I'm happy, my parents are going to think they won the lottery. I don't believe that. I believe that if I put myself first, I'm going to do better work. Shut up, Vicky. What the hell? You're not paying my rent. Shut up, Vicky. You're not going to the party. I'm not taking you with you. There's no +1 on this invitation. Shut up, Vicky. Like by distancing yourself and talking back to it, it loses its power over you. And what also starts to happen is the filter in your brain, the RAS, it's now noticing, oh, you actually care about empowering yourself. And you're going to see more and more reasons to put yourself first. But it really does start with, you got to delete that song, Shut Up, Vicky, Shut Up, Vicky, Shut Up, Vicky, on the playlist in your mind from the past. And you've got to insert the new programming you want to run on default, which is, I deserve to be happy. My parents are proud of me for being me. Nobody's disappointed in me. And if they are, I'm an adult. I can freaking handle it. And I got to start taking care of myself because I deserve that. Those are your beliefs, period. And whenever you start to feel like, here you go, holding yourself back, shut up, Vicky. And you'll notice the more you do this and you take ownership for programming your mind, the less Vicky's going to show up.
Okay.
I mean it.
Right.
I really mean it. If you believed in yourself, what's one change you would make that would improve your life?
I would be less intense, I would say.
Why are you intense?
Because, well, just a little story for you. Like, I'm an immigrant, and so are my parents. And they are very tough on me. They're very toxic because of, culture. And they feel the need to raise me a certain way. But in terms of, living in America, what they're doing to me is very toxic and abusive. So I'm just like always living on the edge, basically.
Yeah.
And if I could just, embrace myself, I think I would be a more relaxed person.
Yes. So are you open to some coaching?
Yes.
So a couple things I want to say about this. I agree with you. And when you take on the job of programming your mind to work for you, you will be happier. You will relax. And the reason why you're intense is because you have been trained to believe that at any moment something could go wrong.
Right.
And that's your lived experience. That is real. That happened. And that is what happened during your childhood. And it will also help you if you can lose the word toxic. Like, unless your parents are abusing you, and I don't know that they are or they're not, but if you lose the word toxic and you amplify a little compassion and you say, I'm not saying what my parents are doing is right. I'm not saying that they didn't cause issues for me emotionally and mentally and psychologically, but they did the best that they could. And I bet it was kind of hard to immigrate here. And I bet it was hard to feel like an outsider. And I bet the stakes felt really high for them. And they felt like outsiders. And they felt like they couldn't mess up. And I bet they took all of that stress that was their lived experience, and out of fear and love, they aimed it at you.
Right.
And the reason why I want you to drop the word toxic is because I see this word thrown all over the internet. And it's a very divisive word, particularly if you want to improve your relationship with the people who are engaged in behavior that feels toxic. And so I think your parents probably did the best they could with their experiences in life and with the situation that they were in. And that if they truly understood what it was like for you as a child, they'd be mortified and horrified and they'd feel terrible. Is that a fair assessment?
I guess for some parts.
Okay. So I don't want to have you have to go in through your whole family history, but if there's, abuse and that kind of stuff, then yeah, that is toxic. And you do need boundaries, and you'll figure that out with your therapist. But when it comes to not adding more pressure on yourself, adding a little compassion so that it doesn't feel so personal, and accepting the fact that this was a form of like emotional abuse for you, that you stressed you the hell out. You have this toxic stress in your body. You feel on edge all the time. You can change this. And you can also change this and change the dynamic with your parents. And the way that you change the dynamics with your parents is by taking responsibility for how you show up for yourself. There's always kind of two people in a relationship. When you change, the energy that you bring into that relationship is going to change. And they're going to have no choice but to change in reaction to it. That's how this creates a major ripple effect, because it has held you hostage for far too long. And you have the chance to not only heal yourself, but to heal this pattern that's been passed down through your family.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
So for right now, we're not really on speaking terms. Yes, they
Okay.
have abused me physically, emotionally, mentally. It's bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So since you're not on speaking terms and you're seeking therapeutic help, let's first say this. I am proud of you for getting the help that you need.
And I'm
Thank
proud
you.
of you for drawing boundaries that put you first. And drawing boundaries that put you first is an example of you believing that you're worthy and that you deserve to be happy. And that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And when you continue to start to evict the bully that's in your head by naming that bully and talking back to that bully, you will start to hear and reclaim the most powerful voice on the planet, your own. Period. And you don't need to worry about your parents. The time will come, if it ever comes, when you will feel strong enough, confident enough, secure enough, and safe enough to reconnect with them if that's what you choose to do. And if you choose to never do that, that's okay too. Because you deserve to be happy. You do.
Okay.
What did you get from this conversation?
Whew. Basically, to have more compassion for others as well as myself.
Yes, because part of learning to accept yourself is being compassionate. Compassion for self is super important. You don't have to excuse what somebody did. But when you seek to kind of understand what was going on, both for yourself, for other people, when you bring compassion to it, that's where you open the door to true power for yourself and where you take control and responsibility for what happens in your life moving forward. You get to decide what happens next. And when you start to change the way that you speak to yourself, again, your whole mindset's going to change. And that will be what empowers you to create a new relationship, if that's what you decide to do in the future. But what you're doing right now is you're actually working on the most important relationship on the planet. And that's the one you have with yourself. All right. So here's the thing about jealousy and passive aggressive behavior from people, because people that give you the silent treatment or are passive aggressive, you know, those people that give you a compliment, but when you stop and think about it, you're like, wait a minute, were they just actually trashing me? You know when people do that. When people are passive aggressive or they give you fake compliments or they give you the silent treatment, typically that's fueled out of jealousy. And jealousy is nothing more than an emotion that people feel when you have something that they feel they deserve. And a lot of us feel jealousy because it's easier to be jealous of somebody and to stay in a negative state than it is to push yourself to do the work to get the thing that you want. And so it's almost like it's your unrealized dream showing up in your face. And what's also right in your face is the fact that somebody else worked for it and you haven't yet. And so instead of going, oh, note to self, time to start cheering for myself and use that example as something positive to motivate myself, a lot of people tend to be like, I hate you. I hate you because you have what I have. So here's what you're going to do when you deal with people that are passive aggressive or jealous. First of all, don't get triggered by it. That's their stuff. It's not your stuff. Second, you're doing the right thing. If people ask, share what worked for you. Third, distance yourself. You don't need to hang out with these people. If you're making positive changes in your life, hang out with the people that are cheering for you. Just because you've known people for years doesn't mean you have to hang out with them for the years to come. So distance yourself. And fourth, if it's really passive aggressive, say something. I literally got an email from a very close friend of mine, and this person had emailed me and wanted me to give advice about SEO, which is how you optimize your website for people to find you when they're Googling you. And the truth is, we don't do a lot of SEO because almost all of our business is social referral, which means that people are coming from social media. And I got I missed the email. I didn't even see it. I mean, I'm moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. I have ADD. I get at least 300 emails a day. Seriously. And I live on planes during the week. And so occasionally I miss an email. So a week later, I literally get an email from this person that was like, thanks a lot. I guess you're too busy to respond. Like, completely not even passive aggressive. It was aggressive aggressive. And I wrote back, what the swear word? Don't talk to me like that. It's unacceptable. And next time I drop a ball, I have a lot going on, maybe you could just text me and say, hey, did you send the email? So before you get all offended, maybe because of whatever, you're envious of what I'm doing or you're insecure, I don't even know. Instead of lashing out at me, which is unacceptable, try just texting and assuming good intent, assuming I missed the email, assuming I'm busy, assuming I want to get back to you, assuming I'm researching something for you, instead of jumping on somebody because of your insecurity. And so here's the thing. You don't have to accept passive-aggressive behavior, and you shouldn't. People get away with that BS because nobody says anything to them, and it becomes a habit, and it becomes a way for somebody to deal with their jealousy and their insecurity by lashing out at you. And so I think it is fully within your boundaries and within your right, and it should be something that you develop the courage to do, that when somebody says something to you that is a fake compliment, that's actually a bash, or it is lashing out at you, you need to literally be like, unacceptable. Or, hey, I don't know if you meant it this way, but that actually felt like a slam and that's not cool. And if I've done something, say something to me. But you don't have to behave like that. So again, how do you deal with jealousy? Recognize it for what it is. It's their stuff. Number two, don't let it trigger you in terms of making you feel bad about you. Number three, spend less time with that person for sure. And number four, it is fully within your right to say that the way that you just talked to me is unacceptable. Please don't do it again. Please don't do it again. And you'll be surprised, because I find that most passive-aggressive people and most people that act out of jealousy, they're never called out on it. And when you bring it to the light and you call it out for what it is in terms of how it makes you feel, the person's almost always mortified and apologetic, and they tend to change, at least how they interact with you, because they know they can't get away with it. So that's how I would deal with jealous people in your life. And the most important thing, hang out with people that cheer for you. This is so important. I can't say this enough. Behavior is contagious. They have proven this. Google the Framingham study. It was a really famous heart study that was done where they looked at human behavior over what's called a longitudinal study, which basically means they studied people for a number of years. And they found that you catch the behavior of other people. If you hang out with smokers over time, your objection to smoking lowers because you're hanging out with smokers and you become socialized to it, and you are more likely to smoke. If you hang out with happier people, if you hang out with people that are more successful than you, if you hang out with people that run all the time, guess what happens? You become socialized to those positive behaviors. The fastest way to make a behavior change is to hang out with people that are positive, that are cheering for you, that are up to cool stuff, that are so busy and engaged in their life, they don't have time for passive aggressive bullshit because they're busy building something and being appreciative. And that's who you should hang out with. And that's why I'm here. I'm so happy you're here watching me, because that's who I want to be in your life. I want to be somebody that's cheering for you. I want to be somebody that is demonstrating what it looks like to literally rise above the noise and rise above the negativity and constantly refocus yourself on what's going right. Constantly look on the horizon and don't see what's wrong. Look for solutions. And that's why I want to be the one, in case nobody else tells you, to tell you that I love you, because I know that's what you want in your life. And when you hang out with positive people like me, it's going to rub off on you. When you hang out with positive people that cheer for you like I cheer for you, it's going to rub off on you. And, you know, what I believe is that you can change your life for the better, because you can change what you think about. You can change those patterns in your head, and you can change the small patterns of behavior, and that will change your life. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.